Two legends. One unforgettable bond. Sally Field, now 78, has finally shared the truth about her connection with Robin Williams, the genius who made the world laugh and cry. Their names alone summon memories of Hollywood at its best, the powerful performances, the unforgettable characters, the kind of magic that only comes once in a generation. But behind the screen, behind the jokes, and behind the applause, there was a story very few ever knew. In 1993, audiences were introduced to Mrs. Doubtfire, a heartwarming yet hilarious film about family, love, and identity. At its center stood Sally Field, playing the strong but conflicted mother, and Robin Williams, in what became one of his most iconic roles. The chemistry between them was undeniable, real, authentic, and layered with a truth that transcended the script. Viewers saw the playful banter, the heartfelt moments, and the improvisational brilliance, but what they didn't see was the deeper connection between two actors who carried their own struggles off-screen. Sally Field was no stranger to hardship. From a turbulent childhood marked by family pain to the uphill battle of being taken seriously in Hollywood, she had fought for every ounce of respect she earned. Robin Williams, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of energy, a man who seemed to live for laughter but who also wrestled with shadows of addiction, depression, and the weight of fame. When these two worlds collided, it wasn't just a movie being made. It was the crossing of paths between two souls who understood what it meant to wear a mask for survival. Now, decades later, Field has spoken with candor about her time with Robin Williams, and about the truth of who he really was when the cameras stopped rolling. The question is no longer just about the genius of Robin Williams or the resilience of Sally Field. It's about the human beings behind the legends. What really happened between Sally Field and Robin Williams, and why has she chosen to speak now, at 78 years old? Sally Field's story begins in Pasadena, California, where she was born on November 6, 1946. From the outside, it seemed like a picturesque start, the kind of suburban childhood where dreams of stardom were just a fantasy on a movie screen. But for Sally, those early years carried a complexity and a pain that would shape the woman she became. Her parents' marriage did not last, and the stability every child longs for fractured when they divorced. Her mother, Margaret Field, an actress herself, later remarried the well-known actor and stuntman Jock Mahoney. On the surface, this seemed like another Hollywood family coming together, but Sally would later reveal that her stepfather's presence left scars far deeper than the public ever imagined. In her memoir, she spoke candidly about the abuse she endured from Mahoney, a painful truth she had carried in silence for years. By her teenage years, she was already dealing with the weight of adult realities, among them a teenage pregnancy that ended in an abortion when she was just 17. These early experiences carved into her not just trauma but resilience. Sally Field learned early on how to survive, how to endure, and how to push forward even when the odds were stacked against her. Perhaps that's why, when she stepped into the unpredictable world of Hollywood, she carried a kind of determination that would serve her again and again. Her first steps into acting came in the mid-1960s, when she landed the role of Gidget in the ABC sitcom Gidget, 1965-66. It was light-hearted and fun, centered on a surfing teenager, and Sally was instantly charming to audiences. The show itself only lasted a single season, but it opened doors. Soon after, she found herself cast in The Flying Nun, 1967-70, playing Sister Bertrill, a young nun whose habit would literally catch the wind and lift her into the air. For many, this was endearing, quirky television, but for Sally, the role became a double-edged sword. The show brought her fame, but it also trapped her in an image she struggled to escape. She was young, pretty, and funny, but not being taken seriously as an actress gnawed at her. Hollywood, especially in those years, had a way of boxing women into roles they didn't necessarily choose for themselves, and Sally felt the sting of that limitation. The frustration grew in her early career, as she tried to prove that she was more than the light comedies and the wholesome girl-next-door parts she had been given. Critics and even casting directors often dismissed her, unable to see the depth she knew she could bring to the screen. But Sally Field was nothing if not determined. She worked hard, studied her craft, and waited for the opportunity that would allow her to show the world her true talent. That chance finally came with Sybil in 1976. Cast in the title role of the television miniseries, she played a young woman with dissociative identity disorder, a performance that required her to inhabit more than a dozen personalities with nuance and emotional truth. It was a role that demanded everything from her, and she delivered. The public and the critics were stunned. Sally Field wasn't just a sitcom actress anymore, she was a powerhouse. For her work, she won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress, a recognition that marked the turning point in her career. From a girl in Pasadena carrying secrets too heavy for her age, to a young actress dismissed by Hollywood, to a woman finally being recognized for her remarkable talent, Sally Field's early story is one of survival and transformation. It was not an easy road, but it was one that prepared her for everything that lay ahead, including the unforgettable collaborations and friendships that would come later in her life. Robin McLaurin Williams was born on July 21, 1951, in Chicago, Illinois, into a family that outwardly appeared to have everything. His father, Robert Fitzgerald Williams, was a senior executive at Ford, and his mother, Laurie McLaurin, came from a well-established Southern family. Wealth and privilege surrounded him, yet what was missing was a sense of closeness. By his own accounts later in life, Robin often felt like an only child even though he had half-siblings, spending long stretches of time in the company of toys rather than people. His childhood was safe, but emotionally distant, and it was within that silence that he discovered the power of his imagination. As a boy, Robin was shy, even withdrawn, but he had an extraordinary gift for invention. With a room full of toy soldiers, he could create entire worlds, voicing each character with precision and humor. This ability to shift between personalities became his secret outlet, a way to bring life into the quiet corners of his home. He would later recall how his mother's own sharp wit influenced him. She could make a room laugh, and he inherited that same spark. Humor, for Robin, became both shield and sword, a way to cope with loneliness and a way to connect when words alone weren't enough. His path toward performance solidified when he pursued theater. After attending Claremont Men's College and briefly studying political science, Robin realized his true calling and enrolled at the prestigious Juilliard School in New York City. There he was one of only a few students selected by legendary teacher John Houseman, and it was at Juilliard that he befriended fellow student Christopher Reeve. Even in this pool of immense talent, Robin stood out. His classmates often described him as unpredictable, one moment disciplined, the next exploding into a whirlwind of characters, accents, and improvised bits that left everyone doubled over in laughter. Robin's true breakthrough came in 1978 with the ABC sitcom Mork and Mindy. Cast as Mork, a goofy, wide-eyed alien sent to Earth, Robin transformed a simple premise into a national sensation. Unlike most television actors who stuck tightly to scripts, Robin improvised constantly, so much so that the show's writers began leaving room in the script with stage directions like "Robin does something here." His manic energy, rapid-fire wit, and ability to turn even the most ordinary line into comedy gold made him a household name almost overnight. By the time the series ended in 1982, America wasn't just watching Robin Williams, they were enthralled by him. At the same time, Robin was conquering stand-up comedy. His stage shows were legendary, frantic, unrelenting, and almost otherworldly. He would leap from character to character, flipping voices and dialects in a blur that audiences could barely keep up with. One moment he was a Scottish golfer, the next a Russian cab driver, then suddenly a squeaky-voiced child. It wasn't rehearsed in the traditional sense, it was pure, unfiltered improvisation, like lightning bottled on stage. Many who saw him perform in those years described it as exhausting in the best way. His comedy didn't just make people laugh, it left them breathless. Yet behind the brilliance lay shadows. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, at the height of his fame, Robin slipped into a lifestyle that mirrored the excesses of the era. Cocaine and alcohol became regular companions. His relentless pace, combined with the temptations of fame, left him vulnerable to addiction. The shocking death of his close friend John Belushi from a drug overdose in 1982 jolted Robin into a turning point. Shaken by how close he had come to the same fate, he quit cocaine and alcohol, determined to fight his way back to clarity. Through it all, his career only expanded. Hollywood recognized not only his gift for comedy but also the extraordinary depth he could bring to drama. In Good Morning, Vietnam, 1987, audiences saw a blend of comedic improvisation and heartfelt sincerity. In Dead Poets Society, 1989, he delivered one of his most moving performances as an English teacher who inspired students to seize the day. With Awakenings, 1990, opposite Robert De Niro, he revealed yet another side of his talent, quiet, restrained, and deeply human. By the early 1990s, Robin Williams had become one of the most versatile and admired actors in the world. From a shy boy in Chicago who created voices to fill his silence, to a stand-up force who rewrote the rules of comedy, to a Hollywood star who could make audiences both roar with laughter and weep with emotion, Robin Williams' rise was nothing short of meteoric. His genius seemed limitless, yet even then, beneath the dazzling performances, the shadows never fully disappeared. By the early 1990s, both Sally Field and Robin Williams had carved out towering reputations in Hollywood, though in very different ways. Field had earned respect as one of the finest dramatic actresses of her generation, her name already etched into Oscar history for unforgettable roles in Norma Ray and Places in the Heart. Robin Williams, meanwhile, was the mercurial comet, dazzling audiences with his unpredictability, his relentless energy, and his seamless ability to jump between laughter and tears. It was inevitable that their paths would eventually cross, but few could have predicted that when they did, they would create one of the most beloved family films of all time, Mrs. Doubtfire. The setting was Hollywood, 1993. At the time, Robin was looking for a project that would showcase both his comedic brilliance and his softer, more emotional side. The story of Daniel Hillard, a father so desperate to be with his children that he disguises himself as an elderly British nanny, was the perfect vehicle. It allowed him to unleash his improvisational genius, while also grounding the performance in themes of love, family, and the pain of separation. The casting of Miranda Hillard, the mother, the wife who makes the difficult decision to separate from her husband, was just as crucial. The role required someone who could play strength and vulnerability with equal power, and Sally Field was the natural choice. When filming began, the contrast between their styles was immediately apparent. Sally Field was meticulous, measured, and deeply grounded in her approach. She had built her career on discipline, preparation, and truthfulness in every scene. Robin Williams, on the other hand, was a storm of improvisation. He rarely delivered a line the same way twice. Take after take, he would invent new dialogue, shift accents, or add physical comedy no one had seen in rehearsal. For many actors, this could have been disorienting, even frustrating. But Sally Field brought balance to the chaos. Her stability, her emotional anchor, gave Robin the space to be wild without losing the heart of the story. Behind the scenes, the cast and crew quickly realized they were witnessing something special. Robin's improvisations were so unpredictable that director Chris Columbus often ran multiple cameras at once, just to make sure nothing was missed. He later admitted that many of Robin's best lines were unscripted, born in the moment, impossible to replicate. Meanwhile, Sally served as the emotional compass. In the scenes where Miranda had to confront Daniel, whether in arguments or in moments of quiet reflection, she kept the story tethered to reality. It was this push and pull, this dance between Robin's comedy and Sally's authenticity, that gave the film its extraordinary power. There were countless moments on set where Robin's antics had everyone in stitches, Sally included. But she also knew when to resist, when to hold her ground as Miranda. That resistance gave the film its emotional core. Miranda wasn't just the straight man to Robin's chaos, she was a fully realized character, a mother making painful choices. It was Field's depth that kept the story from becoming just a comedy. Instead, Mrs. Doubtfire became a film about love in its most complicated form, the love between parents and children, even when marriages fail. When the film was released, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Audiences flocked to see it, and critics praised the performances. Robin Williams' shape-shifting turn as both Daniel and Mrs. Doubtfire became one of his defining roles, a showcase for his genius. Sally Field's portrayal of Miranda was equally praised for its humanity and nuance. She wasn't the villain of the story, she was the mirror of real life, the mother caught between responsibility and compassion. Together, their dynamic elevated the film far beyond the expectations of a family comedy. At the box office, Mrs. Doubtfire was a phenomenon. It became the second highest-grossing film worldwide in 1993, behind only Jurassic Park. Families returned to see it again and again, drawn not only by the humor but by the warmth and truth at its center. The movie would go on to win the Academy Award for Best Makeup, thanks to the stunning transformation of Williams into the beloved nanny, and it earned Golden Globe Awards for both Robin Williams and for Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy. But beyond the accolades, the legacy of Mrs. Doubtfire lies in its cultural impact. It wasn't just a comedy, it was a film that spoke to millions of families experiencing divorce, showing that love can survive even when marriages don't. It became a touchstone, a movie that parents and children could watch together and both laugh and cry. At the heart of that impact was the chemistry between Robin Williams and Sally Field, a partnership that blended improvisational chaos with emotional truth in a way few films ever achieve. For both actors, Mrs. Doubtfire became one of the crown jewels of their careers, and for audiences, it remains a timeless classic. It was more than just a movie, it was the moment two very different stars collided, and in that collision, created something unforgettable. Fame has a way of painting pictures that are rarely the full truth. For audiences, Sally Field was the woman who seemed to embody resilience on screen, the actress who could play steel and softness in equal measure. Robin Williams, meanwhile, was the electric storm, the man who could turn any room into a carnival of laughter, whose very presence seemed to brighten even the darkest corners. But behind those public images, both of them were fighting private battles that few could see. And it was in those unseen struggles that Sally and Robin discovered a quiet, unspoken bond. Sally Field's career had been paved with both triumph and turmoil. She was the girl who fought her way out of being typecast as America's sweetheart in shows like Gidget and The Flying Nun. She wanted to be more than the cheerful face on television, and she fought fiercely to be taken seriously in an industry that dismissed her as lightweight. That determination paid off. Her performances in Sybil, Norma Ray, and Places in the Heart won her not only awards but respect. Still, behind the accolades lay deep personal pain. Field endured failed marriages, first with her high school sweetheart Stephen Craig and later with producer Alan Griezmann. She raised 3 sons largely on her own, all while enduring the pressures of Hollywood's impossible expectations for women, demands to stay youthful, to remain desirable, to balance career and motherhood without faltering. In her memoir, she would later reveal the traumas of her childhood, including the abuse she endured from her stepfather. It was a past that never fully released her, even as she stood in the spotlight. Robin Williams carried his own shadows. To the public, he was a whirlwind of voices, characters, and energy seemingly unstoppable. Yet offstage, Robin often spoke of how comedy had been a mask, a way to shield himself from loneliness. Raised in a wealthy but emotionally distant home, he spent much of his childhood alone, retreating into imagination and humor to fill the void. As fame hit him like a tidal wave in the late 1970s and 1980s, he also found himself drowning in the darker temptations of Hollywood. Cocaine and alcohol became constant companions, leading to very public struggles with addiction. Though he eventually got sober, the battles were never simple. Robin was haunted by bouts of depression, by periods of profound sadness that no amount of applause could cure. Friends often said that while he could make the world laugh, he sometimes couldn't escape his own pain. It was in this shared understanding of smiling in public while hurting in private that Sally and Robin found common ground during the making of Mrs. Doubtfire. Their connection was never about romance. It was about respect. It was about trust. It was about two people who had fought long, lonely battles behind closed doors, recognizing something familiar in one another's eyes. On set, Sally often spoke about how Robin's energy could light up every corner of the room. He was irrepressible, bouncing between characters, accents, and jokes with an intensity that left everyone gasping for breath from laughter. But she also noticed what others might have missed, the moments when his shoulders dropped, when the room quieted and the mask slipped. Beneath the brilliance, there was always a hint of sadness, a shadow that no amount of laughter could quite erase. Sally understood that duality all too well. She, too, had learned how to perform joy while carrying private sorrow. Their friendship grew from that recognition. They didn't need to speak about it constantly, they simply knew. On set, Sally gave Robin the grounding he needed to push himself without floating away entirely. Off set, Robin gave Sally a partner who never judged her, who respected her talent and her boundaries. In a Hollywood often driven by ego, Their connection was refreshingly honest, built not on glamour but on mutual empathy. Years later, Sally would reflect on Robin with both admiration and melancholy. She described him as a fire, bright, consuming, impossible to ignore. But she also spoke of the cost of burning that brightly, of how exhausting it could be to live behind such a dazzling mask. She never pretended to have all the answers about Robin's struggles, but she made clear that she saw him fully, both the brilliance and the fragility. Their bond became a quiet testament to the truth that fame doesn't protect anyone from pain. If anything, it often makes the burden heavier. For Sally Field and Robin Williams, what drew them together wasn't just the success they achieved, it was the resilience they shared, the understanding that survival in Hollywood wasn't just about talent, but about endurance, about carrying hidden scars while still stepping into the light. As the 1990s gave way to a new century, Robin Williams' career continued to evolve in ways that showed the full depth of his artistry. For so long, audiences had known him primarily as the manic genius of stand-up, the whirlwind from Mork Mindy, and the rubber-faced comic who turned every scene into a playground. But in his later years, Robin revealed himself as far more than a comedian. He was also one of the most gifted dramatic actors of his generation, capable of stirring performances that lingered long after the laughter faded. His career in the 1990s became a careful balancing act between comedy and drama. On the comedic side, he reached new heights with Aladdin, 1992, where his turn as the genie wasn't just a performance but a revolution. Improvised, unpredictable, and filled with references no one expected in a children's film, Robin transformed the animated character into a cultural icon. Then came Mrs. Doubtfire, 1993, the role that fused his gift for humor with raw emotional depth. To millions, he became both the funny nanny and the devoted father who would do anything for his children. But alongside the comedy, Robin was crafting a body of dramatic work that proved his genius went far beyond improvisation. In Dead Poets Society, 1989, he played John Keating, the unorthodox teacher who encouraged his students to seize the day. The role became a touchstone for a generation, earning him an Academy Award nomination. Later, in Good Will Hunting, 1997, he stepped into the role of Dr. Sean Maguire, the therapist who helped a troubled young genius confront his pain. The performance was quiet, restrained, and deeply human, so different from his usual manic style, yet every bit as powerful. It earned Robin his long-awaited Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, cementing his place not just as a comedian who could act, but as a true dramatic force. Even as he reached these career highs, Robin's personal life grew more difficult. His struggles with depression never disappeared, and in his later years, his health began to deteriorate. In 2014, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a devastating revelation for someone whose life and career had always depended on his physical energy and expressive face. Only later would it be discovered that his condition was, in fact, Lewy body dementia, a disease that causes not only physical decline but severe psychiatric symptoms, paranoia, hallucinations, and deepening depression. It was a cruel twist of fate for a man who had spent his life bringing joy to others. During these years, Sally Field was experiencing her own resurgence. While Robin fought his battles in private, Sally returned to the stage and continued to prove her power as a dramatic actress. On Broadway, she delivered acclaimed performances in productions such as The Glass Menagerie and later All My Sons. On screen, she returned to film in memorable roles, including her turn as Mary Todd Lincoln in Steven Spielberg's Lincoln, 2012, which earned her yet another Academy Award nomination. It was a reminder that her talent, like Robin's, was enduring, that she could still captivate audiences with the same force she had decades earlier. Though their careers moved along separate tracks after Mrs. Doubtfire, Sally never forgot the experience of working with Robin. In interviews, she often spoke of him with a mixture of admiration and sadness. She described his genius as something almost otherworldly, an energy that could transform a set, a scene, even a life. But she also acknowledged the pain behind that genius, the toll it took, the weight he carried that few could see. He could fill a room with laughter, she once reflected, and yet there was always this deep, quiet sadness. Fans often wondered why Robin and Sally never reunited on screen after Mrs. Doubtfire. Hollywood certainly had opportunities, but the stars never aligned. Still, Sally often cited Robin as one of her favorite collaborators, not just because of his brilliance, but because of the humanity he brought to every moment they shared. She never framed their connection in terms of lost opportunities, but in terms of gratitude, grateful that she had been there for one of his most defining performances, grateful that she had glimpsed both the fire and the fragility of the man behind the laughter. Looking back now, it is easy to see their careers as parallel lines, two paths that intersected only briefly, but left an indelible mark. Robin's later years were marked by both triumph and tragedy, while Sally's were defined by resilience and renewal. And yet, in the middle of it all, they shared a moment in time that gave the world Mrs. Doubtfire, a story that spoke to millions and revealed truths about family, love, and the hidden struggles of even the brightest stars. On August 11, 2014, the world seemed to stop. News broke that Robin Williams, the man who had given life to countless characters, who had made millions laugh, who had inspired generations, was gone. His death by suicide at the age of 63 sent shockwaves across the globe. It was almost unthinkable. How could someone so full of life, so endlessly creative, have been suffering so deeply? For fans and colleagues alike, the grief was immediate, raw, and profound. Tributes poured in from every corner of the world. Social media lit up with stories of chance encounters, memories of films, and the impact his words had on people who had never met him but felt as though they knew him. Fellow actors described him as a once-in-a-lifetime genius, a man whose kindness matched his talent. Fans placed flowers, notes, and even apples outside filming locations of Dead Poets Society, scrawling "Oh Captain, my Captain" as a farewell to the teacher who had taught them to seize the day. In San Francisco, where Robin had lived much of his life, murals began appearing overnight. It was a global mourning unlike anything Hollywood had seen in years. Among the voices that rose in tribute was Sally Fields. For her, the loss was personal. She had worked alongside Robin during one of his most defining roles, had witnessed his energy, his brilliance, and his vulnerability up close. In her statement, she wrote words that captured the essence of her friend: "I never knew a fire like Robin's. I never saw a spark so bright. He was my friend." Simple, heartfelt, and devastating, her tribute revealed not only her admiration but her grief at losing someone who had meant so much to her, both as a colleague and as a human being. In the years since his passing, Sally has continued to reflect on Robin's life and the truth beneath the mask of comedy. She has often spoken about how his energy could fill any room, how he had a gift that seemed supernatural, but also how he carried a sadness that few could fully comprehend. She knew that his humor wasn't just about entertaining others, it was also a shield, a way of keeping the darkness at bay. For Sally, Robin's death was not just the loss of a collaborator, but a painful reminder of the silent battles so many face, even those who seem to have everything. Robin's death also brought urgent attention to the issue of mental health in the entertainment industry. If someone like him, beloved, successful, admired, could be struggling so deeply, what did that say about the pressures hidden behind Hollywood's bright lights? In the weeks and months after, discussions about depression, addiction, and mental illness became more prominent. His family later revealed that his struggles were compounded by Lewy body dementia, a neurological disease that causes both physical and psychiatric symptoms. The revelation explained much of what he had been experiencing: paranoia, confusion, and a sense of decline that was unbearable for a man whose identity was so tied to his vitality and quick mind. For Sally Field, Robin's death became part of a larger truth she has tried to share with the world: that greatness and fragility can coexist in the same soul. She has urged audiences to remember Robin not for the way he died, but for the joy he gave, the lives he touched, and the brilliance he shared so generously. To her, Robin Williams was not a tragedy, he was a gift. The tragedy was that his pain silenced him before the world was ready to say goodbye. Even now, more than a decade later, his absence is still felt. His films continue to inspire, his characters live on in reruns, streaming platforms, and the hearts of fans young and old. And for Sally Field, his spark remains alive in memory, a spark that once burned so bright, so fiercely, that it lit up everyone who had the privilege to be near it. At 78, Sally Field carries the air of someone who has lived many lives. She has been the television ingenue, the serious actress fighting to be heard, the Oscar-winning star, and the Broadway veteran. But beyond the roles and the accolades, Sally today is defined by her willingness to be candid about her triumphs, her traumas, and the truths that shaped her. No longer constrained by Hollywood's demand for silence, she has chosen to speak openly, not only about her own life but also about the people who mattered most along the way. Among them is Robin Williams. In her memoir, In Pieces, and in interviews over the last several years, Sally has reflected on the scars of her past. She has spoken bravely about the abuse she endured at the hands of her stepfather, Jock Mahoney, and about the silence that followed her through adolescence. She has shared her battles with depression, her moments of self-doubt, and the emotional toll of trying to balance a career in Hollywood with raising 3 children. For decades, she presented the world with strength, but now she allows us to see the fragility beneath it. Her honesty has become part of her legacy, showing that survival isn't just about resilience, but about telling the truth. That same honesty extends to the way she remembers Robin Williams. For Sally, working with him on Mrs. Doubtfire was more than just a career milestone, it was a transformative experience. She often recalls how Robin's humor seemed endless, how he could make an ordinary day on set feel like an explosion of joy. But she also saw what others sometimes missed. Between takes, in quiet moments, Robin's shoulders would sag, his eyes would carry a weight that contradicted the laughter. Sally recognized that duality because she knew it herself, the ability to perform one emotion while living another. When she speaks of Robin now, she does not romanticize or mythologize him. Instead, she tells the truth. She acknowledges the brilliance of his mind, the lightning-fast way he could leap from one character to another, but she also speaks of the fragility beneath it. Robin was not just a genius, she says, he was a man who needed love, compassion, and understanding. The very qualities that made him extraordinary also left him vulnerable. To Sally, the truth about Robin is not scandalous or sensational. It is simple, and it is human. He was both dazzling and delicate, and he carried both with grace until the burden became too heavy. Sally often reminds people not to let Robin's death define him. In interviews, she has urged audiences to focus not on the tragic end, but on the vastness of what he gave while he was here. Remember the joy, she has said in so many words, the joy of his performances, the comfort of his characters, the laughter that echoed across generations. That, she believes, is his real legacy. To dwell only on his pain is to miss the larger truth of his life, that even in his own struggles, he gave the world immeasurable light. Her reflections are not only about Robin but about herself as well. In telling the truth about him, Sally is also revealing the truth about the cost of survival in Hollywood. Both she and Robin learned to wear masks in order to keep going, to keep working, to keep entertaining. At 78, she no longer feels the need to hide behind those masks. By telling her story and his, she is giving permission to others to embrace the complexity of their own lives. Today, Sally Field stands as one of the last great storytellers of her era, an actress who has lived through the full spectrum of Hollywood's demands and emerged with her voice intact. She tells the truth because she knows the danger of silence, and because she understands that remembering Robin Williams is not about tragedy, but about humanity. His legacy, as she describes it, is not the way he left the world, but the way he made it brighter while he was here. And so, at 78, Sally Field's truth is both a tribute and a lesson. It is a reminder that behind every great performance lies a human being, fragile and finite. It is an insistence that we remember Robin Williams not with sorrow, but with gratitude. Above all, it is a call to hold on to the laughter, the love, and the spark of a man who gave everything he had to make the world a little lighter. When we look back at the lives of Sally Field and Robin Williams, it becomes clear that their journeys, though different in many ways, were bound by similar threads. Both of them carried burdens behind closed doors that the public rarely saw. Both of them knew what it meant to smile while hurting, to perform while struggling, and to find meaning in the work even when the world around them felt heavy. And both of them left behind legacies that will forever shape the way Hollywood tells its stories. Sally Field's truth, shared so candidly in her later years, is not the kind of revelation designed to shock or scandalize. Instead, it is an act of love. By speaking about Robin Williams with honesty, she is reminding the world that behind the wild improvisations and explosive comedy was a man who carried profound vulnerability. Her memories of him are not filled with gossip or spectacle, they are filled with respect. She honors him as a collaborator who gave everything to his craft, as a friend who filled rooms with joy, and as a soul who struggled, just as she did, with the weight of expectations and the pain of private battles. Together, Sally and Robin's careers illustrate the dual nature of Hollywood itself. On one hand, it is a place of triumph, where talent can be immortalized and stories can touch millions. On the other, it is a place of intense pressure, where personal struggles are often hidden in the shadows of bright lights. Both of them understood that truth intimately. Sally fought to be taken seriously as an actress, overcoming typecasting, failed relationships, and deeply rooted trauma. Robin, for all his fame, wrestled with depression, addiction, and the slow encroachment of a disease that took from him the very tools that made him who he was. Their parallel struggles remind us that even the brightest stars are still human, and that greatness does not erase vulnerability. Yet their legacies are not defined by pain. Sally Field stands today as a testament to resilience, a woman who transformed her hardships into performances that continue to resonate with honesty and power. Robin Williams remains a symbol of boundless creativity, a man whose work continues to bring laughter and tears long after his passing. For audiences, their stories are not just entertainment, they are lessons in perseverance, empathy, and the fragile beauty of the human spirit. Perhaps the greatest gift Sally gives us now is perspective. She urges us to remember Robin not for how he died, but for how he lived. To see not only the tragedy of his final days but the joy of the decades he gave us. To understand that behind every laugh was a man searching for peace, and that the best way to honor him is to carry forward the light he left behind. In the end, Sally Field's truth about Robin Williams is not complicated. It is not sensational. It is simple, heartfelt, and enduring. He was human. Brilliant, flawed, and unforgettable. And though he is gone, his spark still lights up the world.